What's up, guys? Today we are going to start with um today we are going to start with ecology. Tonight's notes will just be on the first 2 pages of ecology. In this entire packet, we're going to be studying the basics before we get into energy flow through ecosystems. These notes will be important. You'll definitely have an open note quiz on these in the morning. Um, Make sure you fill in all appropriate areas. You can write in the margins if you want to add a few things that might be helpful for you. So, ecology is the scientific study of interactions of organisms with each other and with the environment. Now, the environment might consist of living and non living components. The German biologist, his name was Ernest Haeckel, came up with the term ecology as he viewed nature as a house with its own economy, which is very interesting. Uh, the preface or the prefix eco stemmed from the Greek term oikos, meaning house or the study of a house. The largest of nature's houses is the biosphere. The biosphere refers to the biological component of Earth's systems. In other words, it's the planet or the part of the planet that can sustain life and all of the interactions um, that that life needs. So, as humans, we are just a part of the biosphere. Interdependence is one of the biggest themes within ecology. Organisms and their environment are interdependent. Every organism requires and relies on other organisms to survive. For example, this snail that you see couldn't live without plants and algae to eat. The plants and algae actually would not um, grow without the bacteria that helps recycle nutrients. This snail also regurgitates or deposits bacterial wastes that help other organisms grow, as well as bacteria on this plant grow. The interdependence among organisms is huge, and it's a huge dynamic of the biosphere. So think of a giant web of interdependence. Everything is dependent on something else. We have levels of organization, and that's how we make sense or how we study the different levels of ecology. So, our study of ecology may range from an individual organism to the entire planet. And they're as follows. So, we start with individuals, populations, communities, ecosystems, biomes, and the biosphere being the biggest. Organism or individual, you're thinking of one. Um, Organisms, populations, communities in a forest. So, like each tree is one single organism together. Red pine trees make up a population, and red pines, white pines, mule deer, cottontail rabbits all comprise a community. Ecosystems would be in term of the living and non-living components. So coastal ecosystems in the southeastern United States include the living organisms, so the oak trees, the marsh grasses, as well as the non-living components, the pH of the water, the sediment, water temperature, air temperature. And then the biosphere, which encompasses all ecosystems on Earth. So the tundra, um, the the tropical rainforest, etc. Species is a group of individuals similar to one another that can breed and create fertile offspring. Well, a population is a group of organisms of one species that can interbreed and live in a defined area. The real difference between these two vocabulary terms is that a population is in a defined area. That's going to be really important on your quiz tomorrow, so make sure to keep that in mind. Some examples of populations that you may hear of or have heard of are a herd of sheep, a flock of geese, a colony of ants, a culture of bacteria, a sleuth of bears, a brood of chickens, or a pack of dogs. Communities are groups of populations, so groups of species comprised of many species that live together in a defined area. So, again, that defined area component is really important for communities. An ecosystem is a combination of the communities and the physical environment. So, they all build upon each other. An ecosystem is all of the living and non living factors in a particular place. So, ecosystems can be large or they can be really, really tiny. Some examples are a rotting log, a koi pond, a lake, a little clump of dirt which hosts thousands of microbes, a field, an old maple tree, a bog, or a marsh. A biome is this large area that has a particular climate and a particular species of plants and animals that live there. Think of the tundra, rainforest, and desert. Those are usually the main three that we think of. A biome is a large group of many ecosystems put together. Biodiversity is the variety of organisms, the organisms' genetic differences, and the ecosystems in which they occur. So, ecological diversity refers to the different ecosystems in a region. Species diversity refers to the different species within certain ecosystems. So, tropical rainforests actually have the highest biodiversity out of all of the biomes, which makes sense when you think of the temperature, how much water they get, resource access. And that's why it's really unfortunate that we are losing our rainforests faster than many of our other biomes. So, some factors that will affect our ecosystems. We first have abiotic factors. These are the non living factors that can affect an ecosystem, like soil or pollution or natural disasters or climate. Some other abiotic factors would be pH or salinity, as well, how salty water is. We also have biotic factors, which are the living factors that can affect an ecosystem. So, plants and animals, what lives there. Factors that affect ecosystems as well. So, biotic and abiotic factors will determine the survival and growth of individual organisms and ultimately the ecosystem. So, we'll use our bullfrog here as an example. So, biotic factors that affect bullfrogs would be availability of food and other species that are competing with the bullfrog for food or space. Some abiotic factors would be the water availability and temperature. Maybe take a moment under those two bubbles that you've written in your notes and come up with a few other examples of biotic or abiotic features. For me, I came up with herons, turtles, or plant variety for frogs to hide in. Some abiotic factors were the nutrient load in the water, salinity, or pH. A habitat is a particular place where particular populations live. Think anthills, squirrels' nests, beaver dams, marshes. And habitats will include both abiotic and biotic features. So, how do ecosystems form? Ecosystems are constantly changing. They will always change. So, ecosystems go through this process called succession, which is a regular progression of species of replacement over time. Evolving ecosystems. And you can kind of see that in the graphs on the right-hand side here. Graph number 1 is showing you the waves in which certain plants and species come in. The lower is showing a more visual version of what we think of when we start at absolutely nothing, moving all the way up to a fully grown forest. It also, on the bottommost picture, shows the increase of biomass soil layer over time. So, succession is technically and usually really, really slow, but natural disasters or human disturbances can make really sudden changes to an environment. Think a golf course or a building site. So on land, primary succession, or succession that occurs where no soil previously existed, is called primary succession. Um, the first species to populate that area would be called a pioneer species. So think the pioneers from out west moving for the first time. An example of this would be that a glacier recedes, so as glaciers then melt, bare rock is exposed, or volcanic eruptions where new islands are built or lands covered with lava rock, um, and that starts to be covered. Lichen is the most common pioneer species made up of an algae and fungus. Lichen can grow on rocks. It actually will then release acids that break down rocks into soil. So when the lichen dies, not only is there soil, but it will also leave an organic material or nutrient load that plants can use to grow. We also have secondary succession. So, secondary succession is a succession that occurs in areas where soil already exists, but it's usually been damaged or disturbed. Um, a change to an existing community that does not completely affect the soil. So, it's already there. Think about a forest fire. And in these three photos, in photo number one, we have this lush, beautiful forest, possibly in California. Photo number two, we have a huge fire event. So all of the trees burned down. There's still soil underneath, but the top layer might be a little bit burned, but it's still there. And the third photo shows some regrowth happening after that fire event. This is an example of some regrowth in a fire out in the west. So you clearly see that the trees are singed. Some of that ground cover was taken away, but there was still soil below. And now some mosses, some lichen are starting to grow again.